What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Diamond Studios podcast. This is where three friends get together to talk about music business and the balance of both with life. I'm your host, Nathan Collins. As always, we are joined by the one and only Kevin Beggs.
Hello.
Jonathan Boucher.
Yeah.
And today, we are continuing our Back To segment in August. Today, we're talking about getting back to the basics. Let's get into it. Getting back to the basics. I don't know why.
Of love. Sorry,
No.
had to do it.
No.
No.
Different podcast.
It's not this one. That would go south
So quick.
immediately.
Our listeners would drop.
-12.
Yep.
Like, anyway, we're not going back to the basics of love. For those of you that are worried about that, one of my drum students told me that he was listening to the show the other day, and I was like, "Oh no,
Oh no.
Oh no!
It's not that bad.
Which one?
It's not that bad. It's not bad at all. What am I talking about? All right, so diving into the Back To segment.
Going deep.
We are going to talk about 3 keys to starting your music, and this is open to conversation. Everybody's different. But the first key that I have for really starting your music is, and I think this is more important, especially more now since we have a studio, more now than ever, is identifying your why. There's too many people that are in it for the money, and your music turns out stupid when you're in it for the money.
Yeah.
I mean, some people get lucky and make it whenever they're only focused on the money, but you really have to identify your why. And, what is our why? What's y'all's why?
I've always seen it as a way of music. Like, I've seen it as a way of expressing things that I don't understand or trying to understand through writing. Most of that comes lyrically. And to be honest, I took that from like John Foreman and Switchfoot. Like, they're huge influences on my music. And that really resonated with me, the way that he wrote music and why he wrote music. And so I've kind of adapted a lot of that into why I write a lot of times, which I think is why I was lyrics first, because internally I don't process well. And so I have to either say something out loud to process what's happening, or I have to write it down. And so I think that's partly why I'm lyrics first a lot of times in my music.
What about you? What's your why?
Why?
Why you do music?
Why I do music?
I'll do you one better.
I don't know. I think
Who you do music?
if I wasn't doing music all the time, I would just be listening to music all the time. Because there's just nothing that like is as great as music. Like,
I'm speechless.
yeah.
I'm tracking with you.
I'm relating with you on a very real level right now.
Yeah, it's just like I can't see myself like putting anything like any job or like anything like as being more important as music as in my mind.
Yeah,
It's just like just the greatest.
Yeah. And those are both basically, I think that's what most musicians would say.
Yeah.
Mine is I don't know how to communicate what's going on in my brain or heart. The only, like, if you listen to me play piano, that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That's the only way I know how to get it out. So music for me is a very selfish thing. It's just how I do it. It's just how I process.
Right.
It's how I tell the world all my deepest, darkest secrets. So you should go listen to them.
Yeah. I'll say that for me too.
I mean, for some odd reason, your deepest, darkest secrets, they don't seem as heavy whenever you put a melody behind it. Like, I don't know why.
It's an odd thing.
It's just, it doesn't make sense. I don't know. Like you got people that all the way from got people confessing murder,
Yeah.
you know? But like if you go up to someone in Walmart and be like, "Hey, so I shot a man in the alleyway last night, like execution style." If you do that, they're probably going to call the cops on you. But
Or
if you
run
put it
away.
in a song, huh?
Or run away.
Or run away, yeah. But if you put it in a song for some weird reason, it's acceptable.
Yeah.
You know, or if you're just like extremely depressed and sad, and if you go tell somebody, they're like, "Should I call the suicide hotline?" That's what happens.
Yeah.
And then, but if you put it in a melody, it's okay. It's weird.
It's so strange.
It's so weird. And just knowing that is comforting to me.
It's funny because like you have like some people that are like poets, and they'll
Yeah.
like say something like confess to a murder or something, or like just something off the wall and weird, like in a poem, and people will be like, "You're weird," and then like you could have like a rapper or singer or anyone just say the same thing in a song, and then people would be like, "This is incredible. This is so deep."
It's so deep.
It's pretty wild.
It's kind of crazy. But that's just music.
It lets you get away with things.
Well, I think there's an element of like I guess within music, like there's a relatability with the sounds almost
Yeah.
of like people hear these sounds and they're familiar, so they associate those feelings with those sounds. While they may be paying attention to the lyrics, but they might not be. I think that's
Yeah.
part of it. I think the
Yeah.
melody in music kind of distracts or attracts to whichever way the artist uses it to do that.
Yeah. Wow, we went off on that was a great tangent.
Yeah, it's great.
That was really good. So key number 1 to starting your music is identify your why. If you don't have a clear why, keep looking. Not necessarily for other things to do, but look for your why. Dig deep. Do a little soul searching. Figure out why. Make sure your motives are right, because otherwise your music is not going to translate
No.
the way that your listener's going to want it to translate. Especially for people who are balling on a budget. If you don't have $100,000 to pump into one track, which that's excessive, that's like an album. But if you don't have $10,000 to pump into one track, and you're writing a bunch of crap, then it's harder to be discovered.
Yeah.
But if you identify your why and you put that in music, it's just a different thing. I know from experience. Key number 3. Oh, sorry, 2. I failed math. Key number 2 is experiment.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians make the mistake of they hear their favorite artist and they just automatically assume that that's the kind of music that they want to do.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. When I started doing music, I'm just using me for an example because I can confidently say this. When I started doing music, I thought acoustic style Ed Sheeran was my style. But it wasn't until later on, after I started experimenting with my own music instead of writing and producing for other people, it wasn't until later on that I experimented with my own and realized, oh, this is not my style whatsoever. I like that style, and most of the time I'd prefer that style for the type of music I write.
Yeah.
But, the production side of it, I started experimenting with that and putting my lyrics with it. And I think then I truly found like who I am at this moment.
Yeah.
And who I was at those moments. We're always changing, but
Yeah. I see what
You know,
you're saying though.
yeah, just constantly experimenting and figuring out who you are as an artist. It's just like life. You don't ever really fully develop and grow up. Like even when you die, you still could have been more of something.
Yeah.
It's the same exact result with music. You still have developing to do, no matter what stage you're at. So experiment.
Yeah.
What's everybody's experiences on experimenting? This will be fun.
I think one of the great things about music is that you don't have to necessarily nail yourself down to one style, and you
Yeah.
can just like
There's no rules.
do whatever. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
rules. I mean, you could do an acoustic album and then go and do an electric album,
Yeah.
or an electronic album. I think this is great. This will actually connect to what I've been listening to. So stick around for
Nice.
that. I guess.
Stick around for that.
Now you can't go anywhere.
I can't go anywhere now. You have to stay. But yeah, I think
Someone's hitting the skip 30 right now. Skip 30 seconds.
I feel like if I do a song and I haven't felt like I've like experimented, I feel like in some way sometimes I feel like like I didn't do it all the way.
Yeah. I could
Yeah.
see that. I think back to a time whenever I was like first doing music or first starting out. I think when I was first starting into like more production and more beats, they were awful. None of the beats I did were good back then. None of them. But there was a key point where I followed Andy Mineo on Snapchat, and I remember him saying something that really resounded with me and clicked with me. And he was like, if you're just copying everyone you're hearing, you're never going to create something original. You're never going to create something that's going to stand out from other people. He's like, if you're constantly like just trying to do what's being heard now, it's already been done. Like, you have to be listening to weird stuff. So that sent me on in that moment I was like, polka music with didgeridoo beatboxing.
Oh yeah.
I've yet to do it.
I feel like
That was a phase.
that's something we can all like. I want to step back and say like I feel like I can tell whenever like if I'm hearing a Nathan song or if I'm hearing if it was just acoustic guitar and or like a Kevin song, I feel like we all have different
Yeah, identities.
styles that are actually like identifiable like to us
Yeah.
as individuals.
Which is really cool. Really unique.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Because there's millions of artists out there, and the fact that you'd be able to discern hey, that's that's Kevin out of the millions of people that we've heard
Right.
in our lifetime of musical artists. Yeah. Well, these are great keys.
Yep.
So key 1, identify. Key 2, experiment. Key number 3, they go hand in hand. Start working on it. Start practicing. Because honestly, if you go backwards, you're not going to experiment anything unless you're practicing something. You're not going to be able to identify your real why if you're not experimenting and growing. And you can't experiment if you don't practice. So they all tie together. And so that's why, these are the 3 basic keys to get back to the basics of starting your music career. Putting in the work and practice, that's common sense.
Yeah.
If you're not putting in the work, you're not. Next year, you're going to be in the same dang spot.
And you're going to be a chump.
You're going to be a bum chump.
A bum chump.
I'm kidding. But
Put that on a t-shirt.
No. You can. We should do that.
We should.
Bum chump.
Bum chump. Don't be a bum chump.
Hey, we do have merch. I wore a shirt last week. You should go listen to last week's episode
You said.
and listen to my shirt. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Before we go, what have you guys been listening to?
Jonathan, what have you been listening to?
What have you been listening to?
Calling me out last week. It's your turn to go first.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Harumi Hosono.
Haruni Hosono?
Yeah. He actually a lot of his music isn't out in America, so you kind of have to listen to it on YouTube or he actually found a link on his official YouTube that has really good quality versions of his a lot of his stuff it's Japan only.
It's not on streaming platforms for some reason.
It's not on streaming platforms.
Not all of it.
You can't buy it in an American store. You have to order it from someone who's selling it on eBay, like from Japan.
Are you browsing like Japanese YouTube? Like,
No, it's on his. I mean, it's on his YouTube. He has a
Oh.
link.
I was like, how do you read
He
it?
has playlists that have all of his most of his albums.
Okay.
And so there's ones that aren't on Spotify or Apple Music or anything, so you can't get it. The only way to listen to it is to listen to it on YouTube or buy a CD from like the 2000s from Japan or a vinyl from the 70s or 80s.
Is that pricey?
Yeah.
Okay.
The CDs are like $20, but then the vinyls are like, $100 to $200.
Wow. That's so much.
Man.
But yeah. He has like his first album was like acoustic, like singer-songwriter, country, but like Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on he went on to like pioneer electronic music in Japan, and one of his albums is like the first album to use sequencing, like a sequencer.
It's sick.
That's pretty awesome.
I DJ'd a friend's wedding last week, and one of the songs they had in there was their outro song. It really caught me off guard. I had to text Jonathan immediately, but it was Yoshimi fights the pink robots. Is that right? Part
Yeah.
1. I can't remember the name that well, but it's the Flaming Lips, which sent me down a Flaming Lips listening party by myself. But it was a great time. That's it.
Nice.
What about you?
I have, I know I said this a few weeks ago, but revisited Post Malone's album. Probably as of now, I've probably listened to it about 6 times. Man, people tag our studio and stuff that they didn't record here, and you should stop. Because Band Labs sounds crappy, and we don't put that out. Thank you. Anyway, yeah, I revisited Post Malone's album, and then I bounced back and forth probably too many times between Switchfoot's Meant to Live and John Bellion's Meant to Live.
That's great.
Freaking gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Just so well done. The fact that he recorded it at Abbey Road, and it's just a crazy.
It's a crazy idea. It made me feel more connected to John Bellion too.
I love it. So well done. So well done. But yeah, that's been my picks right there. All right, you want to close this podcast out?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This has been the podcast.
Wow.
This has been the podcast.